Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is Tuesday, August 31st. Like I said in the previous video, last day of August, but we are still in summer until September 22nd. But I am so looking forward to fall. I cannot even tell you, but I've already mentioned that in the previous videos. If you haven't seen that, go back and see it. This video is season 1, episode 2 of Little House on the Prairie. The first 2 videos, I gave you an introduction to this series, as well as real life background stories on the Ingle family. As you know, it's a true story. There's the Ingalls family: Charles, Caroline, Grace, Carrie, Laura, Mary. There were some added fictional characters, including Albert and Adam Kendall and more. And I talk about that kind of in the first video, where I'm doing the introduction and background versus the real life Ingalls family and their whole life story versus what the season keeps truth to the story and any additions that they made, which Michael Landon, as I said, was such a creative director, producer, actor, you name it. I started watching him on Bonanza before he even did Little House on the Prairie. He also was in Highway to Heaven. So he's just one of my favorite actors. Unfortunately, Michael Landon died at an early age. He died in 1991 of pancreatic cancer, so we miss him dearly. God knows what more he could have done. Maybe there would have been a reboot of Little House on the Prairie. Who knows? So we dearly miss him. Quite a few people have died from the Little House on the Prairie series, but a lot of them are living as well, including Laura Ingalls, which is played by Melissa Gilbert, and Caroline, which is played by Karen Grassley, and Nellie, the character Nellie, is still alive. Allison Angram, I think, is her name. So stuff like that. So this series is just so exciting. It's going to have its emotional episodes, its funny episodes. It tackles every life things that we go through. It tackles divorce, racism, child abuse, sexual abuse, rape, marriage, poverty, drug addiction, adoption. God, I can't think. The meaning of family and just supper being so, we call it dinner, but back then they called it supper. And the meaningful thing of just having supper together and getting through climate disasters, natural disasters. That's another one. You know, spirituality, Christian, being Christian, what did that meant for them back then? It was everything. They call themselves God-fearing people. And it's funny how we say that. It's true. We should be God-fearing, but at the same time, God is nothing that we should be afraid of unless we're living a bad life or doing wrong. But it has its pros and cons of when we say that. You have to know what we mean when we say God-fearing. So they use that a lot in the series. They had tackled blindness, fires, oh my God, everything you can possibly think of, strokes, disabilities, just all kinds of things. So this is so exciting to me for. I've been watching it since I was little. I am 55. I have the entire collection. When I was a child, like I said before, I had to wait every week for another episode. It was like devastating, but because we didn't have all the technology. But now I have the entire collection. I am wanting to get me a newer collection, which is the same thing, but it's made different. So just in case something happens, this one I collected one by one, maybe 2 or 3 at a time. It was really expensive at that time, but I finally got it from gifts from family members and a dear friend of mine, stuff like that, and ones that I bought myself. And now I just bought my son the newer collection, which is the same stuff, same contents, but made different. It's all in one big fat case versus mine's is each season has its own case. It is not together. So yeah, so I don't want to get into too much spiel. I just did 2. I'm doing it in one day. So these 3 videos are done in the same day, back to back to back. So that's why you see the same clothes. I look the same way. It's still August 31st on all of them. So I think this is the last one I'm attacked because I got some cleaning to do. I got some errands to run. So I'm going to try to attack episode 2, which is called Country Girls. This is right after Charles and his family ended up in Walnut Grove, and they finally says, this is our permanent home or permanent place. We're finally settled. They built their home thanks to Lars Hansen, who founded Walnut Grove in 1840, and he makes a deal with Charles to build his home and work it off. So that's in the Harvest of Friends. That's the first episode according to the season collection. Like I keep repeating, there is a special 2-hour series that is actually the first season. It's called The Plot. It shows how it all began in the woods with Caroline leaving her family and just traveling through the states, trying to find their place, their home, and all that they go through. So I highly recommend that. But so in the previous video, we just did the first season, first episode, which is called A Harvest of Friends, an amazing episode. I totally like, I can't repeat this enough. Watch it if you get the entire collection or season by season. Watch each season, each episode in order until you complete it, because that gives you a complete vision of what this is all about, what the real life story of the Ingalls family was. Laura, one of the daughters, she's the one that kept journals. She called it a remembrance book and turned it as an adult into a series of books, which then turned into the series. So let's go to the second episode of the first season. It's called Country Girls. I'm going to read what's on here, and then I'll give you my description. So Country Girls aired on September 18th, 1874. It is Laura and Mary's first day of school. This is where they first meet Nellie Olson, who frequently refers to them as country girls. Since Laura hasn't been to school before, she works especially hard at her schoolwork. When the students are given the assignment to write an essay and then present it to the class, Laura recites from memory what she would have written on paper, if she had any. If she had any. So this is their first day of school. Caroline and Charles are really happy because as they came from the woods and they traveled for so long through the different states trying to settle, they didn't have any school. Now, Caroline is a certified teacher, mind you, so she was able to teach them everything at home, but she still felt like they needed a school structure, an actual separate teacher that's not Ma, that's a separate teacher in a school building, so they can have, they can make friends and create a social atmosphere. And like I said, have this structure where they have responsibility of homework, of classwork, and putting it all together. So this is something that Charles promised, that as soon as they completely settled, that this was the first promise on his list, that he would get them in school. And he did. Another reason that they also was caring about so much is making sure they started going to church again, so they can have that spiritual, that faith to create a decent, good life for them. So yeah, so they go to school. They're worried. Laura in this episode, she doesn't want to go to school, so she rebels. She stays in bed, and Mary's like, don't you dare make us late, especially not on the first date. But she refuses to go. So when Mary comes down, they ask, where's Laura? And she goes, she doesn't want to go. And so Charles Ingalls, their dad, goes up and tries to find out what she's feeling and why. And, you know, she's just afraid that she won't be accepted, that you know, that maybe she won't do well and she'll be laughed at and stuff like that. So her father assures her that, you know, she won't know what happened until she tries, that she's got to give it a chance, that is what he promised her mother, that as soon as they were in a town that they completely settled in, if there was a school, that he would get them back to school. And he's like, you don't want me to go back on a promise I made your ma? So stuff like that. So she finally agrees. I mean, they're given a bath, I think the night before. They're dressed in their best clothes, which is poor clothes, according to the society then. And then she goes to school, and so Laura's still kind of like hanging back, and Mary's like, you're gonna make us late, blah, blah, blah. So Mary's excited to go to school because Mary's whole dream since she was little was to be a teacher. She's good at different subjects, math, history, you name it. Laura was not as much. Later on, she becomes an amazing teacher, and she's really super duper smart, but it's with time. She doesn't pick that on from early on like Mary did. So they walk to school, and they finally get there, and they're kind of playing before the school bell rings, and that's when they run into Nellie Olson, and she looks at them up and down like, look at your rags. which were really nice clothes to me. I mean, they were clean and decent looking. They weren't like ripped up or any of that. So I don't know why it was a bad thing. Um, and so she looks them up and down. She's like, country girls. And the way she says it, I think that's what actually made her get her part. I think when she auditioned and said that, I believe that that was the way she said it, that Charles Ingalls said, you got the part. So she goes, country girls. And she tries to make them feel bad for being poor, for being from the country, not the city, even though Nellie and her family don't live in the city. But because they're rich and they own the mercantile, she feels uppity. So she says that, so they're already like, great, see, this is what I was afraid of. So then they're late, so the teacher notices them, asks them to come forward. She puts their name in the registration books, and the teacher, Mrs. Beto at the time, because she ends up being Mrs. Sims because she gets married. She's like trying to get a feel for how much they know, if they've ever been to school before. And they said they've never been to school before, but their ma's a teacher, so she taught them a lot. But Laura's like, I don't know how to read, but I know my alphabet or my numbers, something to that effect. And so Miss Beto shows her that they'll go slow, but she'll give her all the help and support she can. And Caroline gives them books that she stored away in her treasure chest. She has special things in that treasure chest that she's kept for memories, touching memories from her family. And one of them was books that she took so good care of it. So she sends them with Mary, and she goes, wow, your mom really took really good care of these books. We'll make them to good use. So they sit down, and then they've never seen a chalkboard before. And so when really White's on the chalkboard, she's like, how are you gonna be able to use the board again? And they start laughing at him like, they've never seen a chalkboard, how stupid. So Mrs. Beto has Willie show them how the eraser works on the board. So they're amazed, and so they keep getting laughed at. And then they don't have a slate. A slate is like a mini chalkboard that you have so you can rewrite, practice your classwork, your homework, and rewrite it. And they don't have one. They didn't think about it. They're poor. It's not easy to buy. So she says, you know, you're really going to need one. So, and they like Mrs. Beto. They think she's so sweet. And they're so happy that their first day, even though they were laughed at some and this country girls things was being said, they actually liked the school. So they went home, told their mom and pa their whole experience and how they're excited to go back. But then Laura explains that there's this mean girl called Nellie Olson. And she's like, she said this, I just want to smack her good. And she's like, the parents are like, no, don't even think that. Do unto others as you wish to be done unto you. But they don't realize how mean Nellie Olson is and where she gets it from, because they're about to meet. Charles Ingalls already met her, and he goes, if you knew her mom, you know why she was like that. But Caroline had not met them yet. So she just thinking Laura's just exaggerating and just give her time, you know, maybe she's judging her too wrong or too fast and stuff like that. So that's the beginning of the enemyship with Laura, the whole Ingalls family, but especially Laura, because the parents know how to, you know, excuse things and forgive things, and they speak up when they feel they absolutely have to, but in other things, they just let it go, look beyond it, try to be the Christians that they are. But Laura, she's a little feisty little girl where she doesn't take nothing from nobody, and she'll smack you, which she ends up smacking Nellie all the time, and she just can't stand it. She just can't stand the disrespect and the abuse. So she does fight for herself. And then, so yeah, so then they have this kind of open night where they have to do an essay on something about their life. And of course, when Nellie Olson and Willie get up there, they talk about how much money their family has and how they have the most money in town. They own the mercantile. They have the best furniture, and they have so many beds and so many tables and so many paintings and so many dolls. It's all about materialistic things, and people are like, oh Lord, they almost can't get through this speech that they do. But then Mary, it doesn't show Mary getting up, but Mary gets up, she does her essay about her father. The integrity, the decency, the hardworking, the amazing, loving, supportive, fun father that she has. And she makes him out to be a hero, which he really is. But you don't really see her saying her speech, but you see Laura having her turn saying her speech, and she looks like she's reading from a paper, but actually there's only one sentence on the paper. She's reciting it from her heart, and she speaks about her mom and how her mom bought this material to make her own self-address, which was not cheap, and she ended up making dresses for them for their first open night at school, and she made the hair bows and stuff. So she sacrificed material that she could have made her own self-address for her girls, and how they said how loving and supportive and how hardworking, and how they love to see the smile when her smile when they wake up, and when they go to bed they love to see her smile and get a kiss from her, and how she sacrifices so much for Charles and for the kids, and how she's an amazing cook, and how she works from sun up to sundown, and how she works awfully hard. And I know there may be times when it's not easy for her, but just the type of mother she is. I mean, it was such a touching speech, and to recite it from her heart and not be on paper. And Caroline, of course, is in the audience crying, and Charles Ingalls is so proud because he's made out to be a hero. But then Caroline realizes that that wasn't on the paper. And so she tells Laura, thank you so much. You couldn't have honored me more. And I'm so happy and so proud and so thankful for what you said. But I know that wasn't on your paper. And she's like, well, it could have been if I could have wrote it. But she has a hard time in writing. And Laura was always better at just speaking in the moment from the heart. So to be fair and to be honest, she makes Laura go back and show Mrs. Beadle, the teacher, the paper. So Mrs. Beadle knows that she didn't write that essay. It came from her heart, which was beautiful, amazing, and touching. But to be fair to all the other children, it wasn't written down. So she just wanted Mrs. Beadle to know the truth and to grade her according to how she saw best. And so she comes in, and so Mrs. Beadle's like, oh, God, what a beautiful speech, and you must be proud. And she said, I so am, something to that effect. And she goes, Laura wants to show you something. So Laura hands her the paper, and it has one thing that says, thank you, Ma, something, the best mom ever, something to that effect. Don't quote me on that exact words. And Mrs. Beadle gets the point of what Laura's mom is trying to show her. And she appreciates her honesty. She thinks, wow, that shows a lot about you, that you would be so honest and sacrifice her getting a no grade or low grade, even though the speech was so beautiful, and who wouldn't want that? So it just showed Mrs. Beadle the kind of people that the Ingalls were, and that they could be trusted and respected, and that the friendship was going to be a forever friendship. And you know, that she would know that there would be no cheating, no lying, and just because she really liked them, that she would favor them and all this stuff. So they had to establish that integrity of who they were. So Mrs. Beadle, I guess, still gave her a great grade. I don't know, it doesn't show what she really does, but she says something, and I forget what she says, that makes it okay. And she starts to say, well, Laura's having a hard time with her writing skills, but she's working really hard, and I'm sure in a matter of certain time, she'll be really good at it. So she gives her kind of like an oral report card to make it up for that not being on the paper. So, but it doesn't show what she actually does about that, but you know, you kind of get the gist of it. So that's what that episode is pretty much about. And I'm trying to see if I'm missing anything here. And so, yeah, that's the beginning of meeting Nellie Olson, and knowing what this family is going to be about, and the whole first day of school experience, and really getting to know Caroline and Charles Ingalls through Laura's eyes, and really getting that first beautiful, perfect introduction to Mrs. Beadle, the teacher, which they have for quite a few years. And then she does end up marrying and becoming Mrs. Sims, and then Mary kind of takes over, and then Mary goes blind, and then Laura ends up taking over at the end. And then, of course, with the seasons happening, I'm going way ahead, Mrs. Wilder, which happens to be Amanzo's sister, becomes a teacher for a few years. And then, of course, Amanzo and Laura fall in love. They have a real big struggle because He's a lot older than Laura. So that's another topic they attack, age differences in relationships and marriages. So that becomes a struggle and like a stumbling block for Laura and Almanzo's relationship. But at the end of the day, with time, they end up being married and of course have Rose Wilder, which is true in their life story. So yeah, so and Mrs. Beadle is beautiful and she's such a sweet, smart teacher. And it just shows that they didn't have the money available for a lot of things. They end up Charles ends up giving them money for a slate. So they kind of have to share the slate between, they sit together in the school pew, which the school is also the church. So it's used for many different things. It's used for committee meetings. Anytime the board has to have meetings, which Charles Ingalls ends up being on the board. So does Jonathan Garby, Doc Baker, Harriet and Nels Olson, and Larry Garaby, I forget how you say his name. He's a mean racist man, but he does some good in between, but he is just something else. He has no shame in his game. So they become the committee. So it's used for things. It's used when there's been public illnesses like COVID, even though they didn't call it COVID back then, but they had the anthrax plague, and other plagues. So yeah, so they use that for like a hospital. There's an episode called Blizzard. It's a Christmas episode where the kids are so excited to go home for Christmas Eve and celebrate Christmas. And so they did all their work, so she lets them off early. And then it ends up being that they get caught in a blizzard. And so the men are out there looking for their children. And there's one casualty, unfortunately. But most survived, but the whole going through that blizzard and it being around Christmas, and the end is just touching, where Charles Ingalls gets the Bible and speaks on the whole meaning of Christmas and to cherish your loved ones. And so, yeah, so this school is school Monday through Friday. And then on Saturday night, pretty much the Reverend or whoever, pretty much him, because he's the only one I've seen, will clean it, wipe it down, the pews where they sit at for school, and turn it into church pews. And then he moves Mrs. Beadle's desk, or not move it. He has a desk, but he puts like a stand on top of it. It's a short stand on top of it where he could preach from. They cover the chalkboard with a curtain. There's two chalkboards right in the back, right behind Mrs. Beadle, and they're one to the side. So Mrs. Beadle pretty much writes on the one behind her, and the kids, if they have to do a problem solving or math problem, they write on the sides. They have like a wood stove there in case it's cold to keep them warm, stuff like that. So yeah, this is used for everything. So they have one church, which is also the school, and also used for any health issues or anything. Of course, they disinfect. They have one store, which is a mercantile owned by Harriet and Nels Olson. Nels is a heart of gold. Harriet is not. I don't know how he stays married to her and how he deals with her, but there's few moments that sneak in there that he's touched. And he loves her, so he just deals with it. I don't know how, but and he all of a sudden he'll speak up and be, stop it, and then he'll put, like they say, put his pants on, be a man, take control of the situation. But yeah, and they have one meal. There's not a restaurant until later on in the season. There's not a bank until later on in the seasons. What else? And just different farm families and just scattered about. So yeah, so this episode, Country Girls, is about their first school day after they completely settle in Walnut Grove, and what their experience was and how they introduced their parents through an essay, and their first experience on how a teacher would grade or see the honesty from that family, and so forth and so on. And so, and how it's a struggle to buy even just a slate, but Charles gives it. They have to share it. They can't each have their own. They also get like chalk. And again, pride comes into this where, they don't want to ask anybody for help or money. So Charles just happens to have some coins. I don't remember how much the slate is. But yeah, he makes it happen for them at the end of the day. So it's a really touching series. It just like Nellie, you want to wring her neck. But it wouldn't be the series without Nellie either. You have to have a negative, bad person, unfortunately, like we all have in real life. And it's unfortunate. You have to have one of those in every life. So that was their arch enemy, was Nellie Olson, and even the mother, not Nels. Nels is a great, great friend, a great person, heart of gold, how he's in all of this. Willie is her brother, her younger brother. It's just Willie and her. They're both mean constantly through the whole Little House on the Prairie series, to Laura and Mary. And I think at the very end, when Laura gets married and Nellie gets married and moves away and she comes back, then they hug each other and they end up having a friendship. But they live worlds away, so they don't have a constant friendship there in Walnut Grove. But the fact that they got over that pretty much, and Mary has her own life being blind and being married and teaching the blind school, stuff like that. So you can kind of say a little too late, but not really. It is at the end. But then the Olsons adopt a girl that's the reincarnation of Nellie Olson. Big mistake. And that's what the episode is called, The Reincarnation of Nellie Olson. I think it's a two-parter. So anyway, I'm not going to give you any more. I'm not going to go too far ahead and give you any more clues because I want to take season by season, episode by episode, and enjoy sharing my love for Little House on the Prairie with you and inspire you, encourage you to get into it. It will really, really touch your life today. Even though this was in the 1800s, it will make you make different decisions. It will show you that life isn't that bad after all. It will show you the importance of family, the importance of life, the importance of health, which we really need during this COVID with all the controversy and all the negativity. This will show you that they went through those COVID kind of plagues, which they called it back then plagues, how they handled it. And so it will inspire you in your own life in so many different ways, in so many different situations. It will encourage you in so many different ways. It will make you make different decisions even today, even though that was in the 1800s. It will show you what life was like versus now and how we're missing a lot of the wholesome, humble and kind, respectful, compassionate, honest, and decency that was more prevalent back then that ends now, unfortunately. So this will, I'm sure, I can assure you, will change your life. Will change your life. And that's why I'm so excited to share my passion of Little House on the Prairie with all of you. I really hope you enjoyed this video on the second episode of Little House on the Prairie season 1 called Country Girls, which aired September 18th, 1874. So into my next video, I hope you enjoyed this one as well and all the many others. Seriously, this series is going to be humongous. So stay with me on this series and all my other series and everything else that I put on my video. Subscribe if you haven't already. I can't say it enough. Don't forget to hit the notification bell because that's the only way you get heads up on every time I upload a video. Please like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it, all this good stuff. This is so fun to do. I'm so excited. I almost want to do all the episodes and seasons in one day, but I can't. I got to get going on the things that I have to do. But tomorrow I'm going to try to do a couple of more episodes. I'm going to try to keep them constant. Probably do 2 or 3 a day so that you got them going and going and going. So I'm really going to attack this full force. And like I said, it's possible to at least 1 to 3 episodes a day, at least. So I'm going to try to do that. So if I have the same clothes and I look the same, it's because I'm doing them back to back. There might be days that I can only get 1 in. So just go with the flow. Just go with me and enjoy this whole journey of the series of Little House on the Prairie. Thank you so much for watching. Into my next video. Take care and be blessed.